Well, sweet. Guys, we have a scripture. That's our main scripture for the ministry. And I wanted to read that to you guys real quick. So this is Isaiah 58, 10 through 11. And if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like the noonday. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land and will strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters fail not. Love that scripture. So our mission for the group, so the Well-Watered Gardens of Johnson County, helping to alleviate hunger in Johnson County and their surrounding neighbors, which is good because I'm up in Marion County, so otherwise we couldn't work together. By bringing hope and transformation to individuals and communities through teaching faithful stewardship of the land. And then our vision, multiplying simple, sustainable vegetable gardens throughout communities by personally modeling and investing in faithful leaders. Our values of love, humility, faithfulness, and generosity. And then the essence of our group, the Well-Watered Gardens Project, is a heart-based Christian gardening program started by redeeming the dirt and foundations for farming, designed to help people feed themselves and others while experiencing the transforming power of Jesus. And so this redeeming the dirt part, the foundations for farming part, last time we were talking, that's the one over in Zimbabwe that Brian started back in like the 70s and 80s. And then Noah Sanders, the one we talk with over here, that started the American version of it, had redeeming the dirt. So it's kind of cool to know your like lineage through coming through. And that's how we launched it. Simple gardens to create in your space, use that as a place to draw people and share the gospel. So great, I'm gonna talk about what we were doing today. So we went out there and we did that, but why did we lay cardboard out? Why did we build beds? And why did we mulch it in that way? We're gonna kind of talk through the details of that today so you guys can kind of understand what we were doing out there. So this is a picture at my house. I got some chokeberries from Steven, and then I was out sheet mulching, which is what you call what we were doing out there, sheet mulching, around them with some cardboard and then some wood chips that I robbed from the local park where there were some giant piles they had chipped up from some trees. I didn't rob it. I mean, I got in there and got some and left quick, but no, I didn't know. And this is gonna help with major weed suppression and then the grass from coming through. Today we're gonna talk mostly about the layout of our garden site, and then we're just gonna touch on planting, but we'll spend a little bit more time on the planting either at the next workshop or just touch on it lightly enough that you guys can kind of get the general idea and you got all the information in your manuals as well. So yeah, like I was talking about, we were doing the sheet mulching there and what we were doing out in the garden today. And then, so this is one of the main reasons why you build beds up the way we did. So this last spring, we had a very moist spring. And the awesome things about these beds is that they regulate how much water is gonna be around the roots of your vegetables and flowers. Unless there's just a deluge, then you don't really have a choice. So yeah, it's gonna go off and it's gonna fill into your walk paths and everything. And one of the amazing things about the way God created soil is this soil through here, once this water sinks into the ground and is held in that topsoil, it'll actually try to spread itself out, the water will, and it's something called percolation. The water saturated in this ground will percolate up into the bed once it's dry and be able to be used by the vegetables. It's incredible. And so that's the reason we did the mounding. And then also, it's just really easy you're out in the garden and you want to have your delineated space. You can get down, get on your knees easily, work into it. The reason we did it about 3.5 foot, you asked earlier, like, why are we doing it that length? It's because about 3.5 foot, the average arm can reach in and do anything it needs to do in there from either side. And that's what makes it easy. Yeah, and so within your walk paths, it's not only practical to do your beds like that, it's also pretty aesthetically pleasing to have your straight rows to work in, and then it makes weeding really easy too, because when you got like a giant random plot and then kind of like your different rows going through, like I remember the first time I did a garden when I was 15, and my uncle was like, I'm gonna buy a tiller. So he went out and we bought a tiller, we just tilled it all up, and then just planted like 30 different things. And it was like, after a while I was like, wait, what's the plant I want? What's the weed? Like, I can't really tell. And so having your beds laid out like this, it's so easy to delineate. And like, we're spoiled too. Like I was talking about out there earlier, the way the manual lays it out is for like, it's gonna sound funny, dirt poor people. that aren't able to have soil brought in like this, and have to take time to build their own compost, get their own manure in, mix that all in. Like we got the McCartys up the street doing it year round that can come and bring us a load of it. And so the soil we used today was half topsoil and then half their compost mixed up together. And because just their compost mix alone, it's like so rich that if you put plants in it, it would like burn the plants because it's kind of acidic and has so much organic material. And so yeah, it's a wonderful mix. Anything I put in it last year ended up growing like a total weed. So here's kind of more of the reasons on the mulching. So there's so many reasons, I don't want to overwhelm you guys, with why you should mulch. And so what's the main chemical that has to be brought out onto the farm fields throughout the year so that you can get your plants to grow properly? Does anybody know the name of it?
Nitrogen.
Oh, you need nitrogen. So out in the big agricultural, like giant cornfield, what chemical that's like not a very good chemical has to be brought out regularly? Say it again?
Anhydrous ammonia.
Yep, anhydrous ammonia. And then also glyphosate, your Roundup products and everything, your herbicides. And so when you go and you do a mulching process like that, this is the natural, like God mimicked way to not have to bring, your toxic chemicals out into your field, putting those anywhere near your stuff. You're also going to help with any erosion. So those beds we built out there, if you just left that exposed soil, any heavy rains or anything would be washing off that soil. But with the mulching, it helps to protect it, and you actually get better absorption of water into the soil, oddly, with the mulch. You would think blocking it would keep the water off of it, but it gets it to sink down and then insulate it from evaporating quickly. So reduced erosion, and then it maintains the soil structure. And so within soil, you'll have the little microbes in all the living organisms. And what tilling can do sometimes, it can tear up a lot of those living organisms. And so when you do a mulching method, the organisms are able to stay down there, eating that organic material and making an awesome environment for your plant to grow in. Really important one, reduces overheating. And so when you have a mulching on a soil, those really hot days where it's just beaming down, the wood chips are gonna absorb most of that heat. Even when it starts to get cold, it'll do the same thing and help to insulate, to keep those beds slightly warm. Because normally the living organisms in a soil, in a temperate climate like we live in, have to kind of retreat. Just like how fish have to kind of retreat in a pond so they don't get frozen from the top, your nutrients have to do the same thing. But with the mulching, they don't have to retreat so much because it'll stay pretty warm in there so that they're ready to go and just keep growing. And then releases nutrients. So any of that mulch we're putting on there, like the leaves we brought out and everything, leaves are amazing. When you go, you know how you have a well, here's the land, and you have a well and it goes down, it taps into water so you can pull it up. What a tree does is it's a mineral well for the soil. Here's your soil, and then there's these minerals 10, 20, 30 feet deep down in the soil. And a tree goes down, it taps its roots into there, and it'll pull those minerals deep from the soil, put them in the leaves, and drop them right on top. Isn't that so cool? And so when you go and you take leaves from your yard, it's a rich material. And so you go and you put that in your garden using it as mulching, like that triple milled we had out there today. That stuff's great because it's milled so finely that it's just gonna break down in no time and to be sending those nutrients down to the soil. Did you guys know soil eats? It's constantly eating. It's really hungry. So if you don't give it any food, it won't do much at all. The more food you get it, the more active it will become. There's this saying I read in a book last week, and it said a society is only as healthy as its soil. So if you have a very poor soil that has a lot of chemicals being dumped on it and everything, your people are only going to be as healthy as that soil generally is. So that was my little tangent on soil, sorry. Sweet, so yeah, that's the mulching. Isn't that a nice diagram? That's from the manuals we have too. Sweet, and just like we did today, we did the 42, the 3.5 foot planting beds in there, and we did our 18-inch walk paths and our little paths on the outside. And so that's the standard size right there for vegetable gardens. Once you guys get so skilled at maintaining them and everything, you're like, we need 1 or 2 more out in the garden because it's so easy and we need more vegetables. Oh, sweet. This was my little station where I would gather all my flowers and herbs, anything, just put that on there for fun. You guys see my little Native American squash. Those are awesome. Okay, so pretty much after the process we did today, we went and we showed appreciation for God's wisdom by minimal soil disturbance and applying God's blanket of the mulch. And so I said it last time, but Brian, the founder of it, was just walking around and so frustrated with his conventional farming methods and how unsuccessful they were. And then we just look at the nature around him and all the mulch that was just coming off the trees and why certain plants were able to grow amazing in the mulch and they didn't have to deal with weeds at all. So thinking to mimic that from watching nature. And when you work with nature instead of fighting it, that puts you in the best spot. And then we were on time preparing our plot so that we can get spring crops in there. And then we demonstrated the wholeheartedness of going the extra mile, measure out your plot and beds to a high standard. We took the work in bite size, but today with our group, that was great, how many hands we had to help. So yeah, those are the four main principles that we apply when doing our gardens and everything, are doing things to a high standard, on time, with joy, and then, wait, what's the first one again? Man, I just forgot. My principles. I'll remember it here in just a second. Sweet. So this was Kent and some of the kids over at Walnut Grove laying out where they were going to plant all their tomatoes and pepper plants last year. And then there's me after laying them out last year, acting like a creature. Yeah, so this was after we got in all the transplants this last year. Got some tomato and pepper in, and some herbs all around the outside. And got some of the beans and peas coming up over there. You guys see how these beds are a little bit lower over here? I ended up not getting much of a harvest out of these at all because of how low they were. When it got waterlogged in this area, it ended up killing off a lot and stunting the growth. So it made me like a really big advocate to do the beds like we did out there today. Got some height on them and had them properly mulched. But you gotta try stuff out like that to figure it out most of the time. Yeah, it was awesome. It took off after that. Got some of the squash along here, marigolds and herbs throughout. This was a harvest from a garden in Old Town Greenwood, Cheryl and David, and they were taking baskets out to their neighborhood from the raised beds we did. And that was it. It was crazy. It just took off. This was the McCarty mulch soil in those beds. So like I said, it just grew like weeds. And there's my little nephew helped me plant some blueberries. Okay, that's it. These are just fun pictures now. Okay, guys. So any questions on what we did today and why we did it in the way we did? Or any thoughts? Or
Ethan, how long, now we just put the cardboard down, it's ready to plant right away? Or do you wait for the cardboard to kind of break? I mean, what's
Yeah.
the idea behind that again?
Good question. Thankfully, with how deep the beds are, any of the plants you're going to get into there and start growing, they're going to have plenty of room to grow out and expand before they get to that cardboard area. And then that moisture going down and breaking down that cardboard is going to really soften it up and allow any roots to go through and break through pretty easily. Yeah. And so with your guys' gardens this year, what we did out there was for spring vegetables this year. This is about the time you want to get in on it. But to not overwhelm yourselves on your garden, you could always just work on doing that installation with you and the people or gathering some of us to go out and do that for your garden space, and then end up doing May planting in there, which would be more of your summer crops and everything. Just with these, since we were ready to go, it's like, yeah, let's get them in and we'll do some spring crops in them, use it to its maximum. Oh yeah, let us know within your garden space so we can keep it within our email group. Like if we go and get the one in OMS soon, to have you guys come out and help with putting that in would be amazing. That way we could just have many hands on it. Because I read this quote recently and it was work is only work when you don't have enough people to do it and make it fun. Yeah, if you get enough people. It still works sometimes. I had a friend, he was like, except working on sewers. And I was like, yeah, sewers, it's just work all the time. It's true. But yeah, and then next month we can talk about doing a class on planting, potentially maybe out here or at another garden we have in, kind of the different methods for that. And don't be intimidated sometimes by some gardeners. They just have so many little methods and ways of doing stuff. Oh, you soak those seeds before the night and you do it with this seeds. And then this seeds, I take a little sand and put it on top of that and lay a board. She's like, whoa, that's a lot of details. And so like, don't be overwhelmed by all that. Sometimes creativity can be overwhelming. And it's like, this is too much. And so we'll talk about it. Thankfully, the manual, they like keep it really simple because it's easy to get overwhelmed in the gardening world. Well, sweet, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for coming today. And that was great to put that in together.